Chapter 19, You Only Live Once. More from me. Loving and living with John has been an interesting life, and mostly a whole lot of fun. Yes, there's been highs and lows, but all marriages go through these patches. Anyone telling you different isn't telling you the truth. We've had lots of fun, though, John and I. I think the 80s were my favourite era. We were a bit naughty, but fun naughty, if you know what I mean. We did a lot of travelling in that period too, which was great. John did go through a cocky stage. Years and years and years ago, he got too big for his boots. For a brief time, he was a bit full of himself, a bit, ain't I fabulous? That was an interesting period, and I had to pull him down a few pegs there. That wasn't the John I knew well, but it's not surprising it happened. If people tell you long enough and often enough that you're absolutely fabulous, you start to believe it. And then, if you believe the hype, you get big-headed, cocksure. At the time, John had been on the road for months touring, and everyone would do everything for him. He didn't have to think about anything other than singing. I was at home with Robert and James for a lot of it, keeping the family home going and doing all the small things you have to do every day when you have 2 kids, pets and a life. When John would come home from his big tours, I'd give him a few days to settle down, and then I'd say, "Can you please put the rubbish out? Oh, and while you're out there, pick up the dog shit in the yard, please." You know, just standard home life. You want a cup of tea? Yeah. Great. Kettle's over there. And please put your dirty washing in the laundry and then go and clean the toilet. I've had to be like that, otherwise he would have been hopeless to live with. He was bad enough sometimes anyway. So there's been things that were hard. Sometimes it was a struggle, but we got through it. Mostly we've had fun, enjoyed ourselves, travelled and experienced a lot together. We both adore our boys and have loved watching them find partners. I suppose, like most parents, all you want and hope is for your children to be happy. It's strange talking about the boys. We have been so protective of them. We just wanted to make sure that they had a normal childhood, but now they are men. Of course, as a mother, I'm ferociously protective, like a lioness, and always will be, but I'm so happy that Robert and Melissa found each other, and to see Rob so happy is wonderful. James and Tessa, they've been together for 16 years. Tessa is like a daughter to me, and John adores her with his whole heart. Tessa has been such a source of strength for James and for us too. With John in hospital and throughout this ordeal, Rob, Mel, James and Tessa have been there for us both. I will never be able to thank them enough. John and I have made the most of things. You only live once, and that's what we'd always tell each other. I hope my boys do the same. It's a good life, and we made great friends. John and I, Glenn and Gaynor. The 4 of us were a great team. We were like peas in a pod. We used to laugh a lot. We had a lot of fun. And when the boys were busy working, Gaynor and I used to go off together and get into some trouble. A lot of trouble. We certainly made the most of things. When John isn't working, sometimes he'd get a little depressed. Before he was diagnosed with cancer, it had been 2 years since he had performed. The last time was at the Firefight Australia concert in 2020, which was wonderful. But once he gets a bit down, he doesn't want to do anything. I can't go there with him. I have to give out a bit of tough love. Over the years, I've had to be strong. I've had to be a wife, a mother, a psychiatrist, a doctor. I've had to be all these things in one. I've had to be strong and bossy to keep the family together, to keep moving forward. And I've done that because I love John and I love my family. John is a classic Cancerian. He likes to walk sideways and go around everything rather than face issues head on. To this day, he acts like that when he's faced with tough decisions or situations. He always beats around the bush rather than deal with it. And then, of course, That just makes the situation worse for him. John knew there was something wrong. He had a big white mass on the inside of his cheek, and you could physically see it. For several months I was saying to him, "Let's go see about that thing in your mouth." And he'd say, "No, it's all right. It's all right. It's all right." He kept putting it off and putting it off. I pleaded with him to go see a doctor, and finally he did. In August 2022, he was diagnosed with oral cancer. The doctor took one look at it and said, "It's cancer. We're going to have to take it out." My natural inclination was not to waste any time. I figured the sooner it was out, the better. John would have put it off, but we'd just watched his sister die from untreated cancer, so I wasn't going to mess around waiting. He had to get it done right away, and I pushed him to act quickly. Of course, John was scared going in for surgery. I was scared too, but I had work to do. I had to plan as much as possible for whatever outcome we were faced with. It was difficult, and a few times there I was really frightened because his surgeon at the Royal Melbourne Hospital thought they were going to lose him. He got through the surgery okay, but then, when he was recovering, he fell over and broke his back. It was the worst time because he had to go back into hospital and they had him on such strong painkillers he was totally freaked out and had delusions. He was so distraught. Several times we had to reassure him that he was in hospital and that they were looking after him, not harming him. John got through that and then had some trouble with his blood works. And then, just after Christmas, he started a course of radiotherapy. He didn't want to eat. He had no interest in food and no appetite, so the body weight fell off him. He got down to 63 kilos, which is very small for him. Because of the treatment, he lost his bottom teeth. They had to take them out. And just for the record, they didn't take his jaw. I know lots of people think that's what happened, but in the end, they removed the cancer from his cheek and they also scraped his jaw to make sure it hadn't gotten into his bones. Thankfully, the cancer wasn't in his bones, which was great news. So he's still got his bottom jaw, even though the radiation has messed that up a little bit. In hospital, they were feeding him through a tube in his stomach, which was pretty grim. I started taking in my home cooking, things I knew John would like. He would eat a couple of mouthfuls and that would be it. He wouldn't be able to manage any more. For a while there, it felt like one thing on top of the other for John. It was a traumatic time for all of us, but we got through it. Now he's back to eating, which is a good sign, but he can't open his mouth very far, so it's hard. After the bad run with John, James, our youngest son, got sick with diverticular disease, which is an inflammation in the large intestine that can become a medical emergency. James was really sick and ended up having part of his large intestine removed. After the surgery, he had a colostomy bag for a few months. When the doctors went in to do the reversal surgery, they opened James up and discovered a lot of scarring in his gut. They decided they had to give his digestive system time to recover. So they gave him another colostomy bag, but this time in his lower intestine. It wasn't the news James wanted to hear, and having two members of the family battling ill health was stressful. The doctors are hoping they'll be able to take James off the bag later this year, and I'm hoping his health issues back off and he can get back to living his life. For a period there I was thinking to myself, I'm going to wake up one of these days and it'll all be roses and sunshine and wonderful again. I'll wake up and all our worries will be over. It was hard enough to see John go through cancer, but to see James going through his health issues was almost worse, because James is our son and our kids aren't meant to get sick like that when they are young and just starting out. Earlier this year, there was light in all the darkness. In February, Robert, our eldest son, married his partner Mel. Mel and Rob are a great couple, and Mel is a wonderful daughter-in-law. The wedding day was fantastic. It was also John's first public outing after his surgery, which I'll admit was a bit daunting for him. John doesn't look bad. He definitely looks different, but he doesn't look bad. After getting over that hurdle of venturing out, he's gained a bit of confidence in his appearance, but he still doesn't like going out. Let's face it, that's nothing new. He never did like going out. But being seen by everyone at the wedding was a big step forward for him, mentally and physically. It was a beautiful wedding. Despite being freezing cold and raining, it was a lot of fun and everybody looked great. When John was going through cancer, there was quite a bit of media attention about his diagnosis and treatment, and the interest shocked him. He was really overawed by the public's outpouring of good wishes. It surprised him in a lovely way. John's still very modest about his success, and he's felt that way for a long time now. He can't believe that people care so much about him. I don't know if John will sing again. It just depends. Because of the radiation, that whole side of his face is rock hard. The flesh, the muscle, the tendons, none of it is supple. The surgeons need to work out how to loosen it all, so we have to be patient. He's disappointed, naturally, because he may not be up on the stage again, and he loved that. He absolutely loved performing. But we'll just have to wait and see. Having said that, the doctors have given him exercises to do. The exercises are to loosen his mouth, and he does them intermittently. It's hard for me not to nag. I mean, it's not strenuous. It's not like he has to go out and run a bloody marathon or even 100 yards. If it means he'll be able to sing again or even eat food like a normal person again, then do the bloody exercises. But that's not John. Like I said, he's a Cancerian, so he'll pretend it'll fix itself rather than tackling it head on. And then, to be fair, the exercise hurts. The faces he pulls when he does them make me realise how much pain he's in when he opens his mouth too far. But I think the desire to sing will push him to keep trying. At the end of the day, it is what it is. John is very lucky that they got onto the cancer early enough. A lot of people aren't so lucky. John Blackman, who we knew from Hey Hey It's Saturday, wasn't so lucky. He ultimately died from a heart attack only recently, but he really suffered through his battle with oral cancer. There's always someone worse off. That's the way you've got to think about it, and it's what we tell each other. We are lucky. You've got to keep going forward. Otherwise, you're going backwards. Besides, I'm crossing my fingers for grandbabies soon. I hope before we get too bloody old and we can't get down and play with them. I love kids, and so does John. Aside from that, which we have absolutely no control over, I'd love to travel again and maybe go back to Africa. We've loved going to Africa over the years. We first went to Africa on our 25th wedding anniversary, and travelling there has given us so many wonderful memories. It's such an amazing continent. We want to take the whole family on a holiday there. James and his partner Tessa have come with us before, but Rob and Mel never have. It sounds tough, but I really think John needs to get off his ass and do things. Booking a holiday will give him something to look forward to, something to work towards. There's a lot of things that John is missing because he hasn't been working. That means his band aren't working with him, so that's made him feel guilty. There were a lot of people on the road with him, so he employed a lot of people and he feels responsible for them. But it's hard because after losing Glenn, he's lost a lot of his inspiration. Glenn was a massive motivator. He was a very positive source for John and in getting him out there and performing. The two of them were hilarious. Glenn always insisted on walking John to the stage, but his sense of direction wasn't much better than John's. It didn't matter which venue, somehow they'd get lost walking from John's dressing room to the stage, causing everyone to panic. The squabbling. They were like a pair of bickering biddies. They didn't actually argue. They never yelled at each other, but they used to have words. And whenever they were having words, Gaynor and I would sit there, roll our eyes and say, "Here we go again." There are things John needs to do and things we both want to do. Like I said, we'd often say to each other, "You only live once," as we seized a moment or went on an adventure. Now, more than ever, we have to embrace that. John is lucky. He's alive, and I'm lucky because he's still here. After 51 years of marriage, we've still got a life to live.
Chapter 20.